The first thing he noticed wasn't the noise. It was the line. A perfectly straight stretch of fresh black asphalt cutting across the center of his ranch, like it had always belonged there. His truck slowed to a stop. Tire marks. Reflective posts. Even a metal sign already bolted into the ground. Highway access, authorized route. For a second, he just sat there. Then a construction worker walked past his window, barely looking at him. "Through traffic only," the man said casually. "You're not supposed to block this." The soldier stepped out slowly, eyes fixed on the road slicing through land that had been in his family for decades. In the distance, 2 trucks rolled through it, like it was public property. He looked down at the asphalt, still warm in places. New. Permanent. And expensive. Very expensive. He'd seen projects like this before, overseas. This wasn't a shortcut. This was infrastructure. Millions of dollars worth. His phone buzzed. An unread HOA notice, dated 3 weeks earlier. He opened it. Due to non-response, the board has approved emergency access development across your parcel. Below that, one line stood out. Failure to comply has already been interpreted as consent. Behind him, a woman's voice called out, confident, almost amused. "You should have answered your mail." He didn't turn. Didn't react. Just kept looking at the road. Then, quietly, almost to himself, he said, "They didn't just build a road. They built it like I wasn't coming back." His eyes shifted slightly, landing on a survey stake near the edge of the asphalt. Something about it wasn't right. And if that one line was wrong, then what else was? If this happened to you, and someone built $1 million road across your land without permission, what would you do? Subscribe, because on this channel, every story is backed by real documents, and the ending is never what people expect. He wasn't new to uncertainty. Most of his life had been spent in places where maps changed, borders shifted, and the ground under your feet didn't always mean what you thought it did. But this land was supposed to be different. 68 acres of quiet ranch ground, passed down through his family long before roads, zoning plans, or development maps ever touched the area. No fences built for show. No structures trying to impress anyone. Just open space, and lines that had never needed to be questioned. To most people, it didn't look like much. But he understood something others didn't. Land doesn't have to look valuable to be worth something. It just has to be in the wrong place at the right time. And his was. Over the last few years, everything around it had started changing. Fields turned into plots. Plots turned into plans. And plans turned into money. Developers moved in quietly. Then quickly. New roads appeared just outside his boundary lines. Survey markers came and went. Conversations started happening that he wasn't part of. That's when the HOA showed up. They didn't arrive like a threat. They arrived like a system. Temporary coordination, they called it. Just to manage future community development. The president, she didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She just spoke in documents, policies, and approvals, like everything had already been decided somewhere else. At first, the notices were harmless. Mentions of shared access discussions. Future infrastructure alignment. Nothing direct. Nothing aggressive. Just positioning. He read them. Filed them. Then deployed. Before leaving, he did what he always did, documented everything. Updated land records. Verified boundaries. Left a clean paper trail. Because if there was one thing he trusted, it wasn't people. It was documentation. And for a while, nothing happened. At least, nothing he could see. But while he was gone, survey crews walked closer. Markers appeared, then disappeared. Neighbors started noticing movement along his edges. No one asked for permission. No one knocked. No one needed to. Because decisions weren't being made on the land. They were being made on paper. And somewhere along the way, someone had started treating his property like it was already part of the plan. So the real question wasn't when the road was built. It was this. When did they decide it was theirs to build on in the first place? He didn't raise his voice. Didn't slam the truck door. Didn't step into the road to stop the traffic moving across his land like it had every right to be there. He just stood at the edge of it, watching. Cars passed. A delivery truck rolled through. Tires pressing into asphalt that hadn't existed the last time he'd seen this place. Then he turned back toward the house. The mailbox was full. Not unusual after a deployment. But this wasn't junk. Every envelope had the same return address. The HOA. He opened the first one right there. Notice of Emergency Infrastructure Approval. The second. Non-response recorded, action proceeding. The third. Final confirmation of access development. Each one stamped. Each one dated. Each one sent while he was overseas. He kept flipping through them. No signature from him. No acknowledgement. No agreement. Just one repeated line, buried in different forms. Failure to respond within the designated period will be interpreted as consent. He paused. Looked back at the road. Then at the letters. They hadn't asked him. They'd waited him out. His phone buzzed. Another message, HOA Billing Department. He opened it. A digital statement. Shared infrastructure cost allocation, $38,472. Below it, a breakdown. Construction participation fee. Access integration charge. Future maintenance contribution. And at the bottom, non-payment may result in lien placement and restricted property rights. He didn't react. Didn't call. Didn't argue. He pulled out his phone instead. Started taking photos. The road. The signage. The boundary lines. Every detail. Then he walked to the edge of the asphalt again and crouched down. Ran his fingers along the surface. Still warm. Fresh enough to leave a mark. And just beside it, a survey stake. Slightly angled. Not where it should have been. He stood up slowly. Eyes narrowing just enough to notice what most people wouldn't. Because this wasn't just construction. This was alignment. And alignment could be moved. He looked back at the road one more time. Then quietly said, they didn't just build this without permission. They built it like the paperwork would protect them. He slipped the letters back into the envelope. Turned toward the house. Because if they were this confident, then something, somewhere, had already been signed. The only question was, by who? He didn't start with the HOA. He started with the paper. That's where decisions like this lived, and that's where mistakes usually hid. Inside the house, the folders were exactly where he'd left them. Labeled. Indexed. Clean. He laid everything out on the table. Original deed. Boundary survey. County plat maps. His last filed verification before deployment. Then he added the new pieces. HOA notices. Billing statement. Access approval letter. Side by side. Old versus new. And right away, something didn't feel right. Not wrong enough to prove anything. But not clean either. The lines matched, almost. Almost. He picked up the phone and called the county clerk's office. Calm voice. Direct question. Can you confirm if an access route was approved across parcel 47B? There was a pause. Typing on the other end. Then. Yes. Filed as part of a development corridor request. Approved under emergency infrastructure designation. He didn't respond immediately. Just asked the next question. Who filed it? Another pause. Then a name. The HOA. He looked down at the documents in front of him. They'd gone around him. Not over him. Around. Was owner authorization included, he asked. A shorter pause this time. It shows non-response acknowledgement, which allows continuation under certain conditions. He ended the call. No emotion. Just confirmation. They had paperwork. Which meant this wasn't random. This was structured. He went back outside. Walked the full length of the road this time. Measured steps. Counted distance. Marked positions in his head. Every few yards, another stake. Every few feet, another decision someone else had made for him. By the time he got back to the house, his phone buzzed again. Another email. Updated balance, $91,204. Late penalties added. Processing fees. Projected maintenance share. Below that, a formal notice. Failure to remit payment within 14 days will result in lien placement on the property. He read it once. Then again. Still no reaction. Just quiet calculation. A second message followed minutes later. This one from the HOA board directly. Short. Direct. The road increases your property value significantly. Your cooperation is expected. He set the phone down. Picked up a pen. Started writing. Not an argument. Not a complaint. A request. Precise. Documented. He asked for all approval filings. Survey references used. Authorization records. And the exact basis for emergency classification. He sent it. Then waited. Not long. The reply came faster than expected. All relevant documentation has already been filed with the county. No further clarification is required. That was it. Closed. Final. Like the decision had already been made. And from their perspective, it had. Another notice arrived the next morning. This one stamped. Intent to place lien. Deadline circled in red. No negotiation. No discussion. Just escalation. He stepped outside again. Stood at the edge of the road as another truck passed through. Didn't try to stop it. Didn't try to block it. Just watched. Because now it was clear. This wasn't just about building something on his land. This was about making it official. Before he had the chance to prove it wasn't. He looked down at the nearest survey stake again. Tilted. Slightly off. Easy to miss. Unless you were looking for it. And now he was. Because if everything they did was based on alignment, then all it would take was one line being wrong. So why did every document say it wasn't? The notice wasn't optional. Board hearing, attendance recommended. Date. Time. Location. And one line at the bottom. Failure to appear may result in final enforcement action. He showed up anyway. Not early. Not late. Exactly on time. The room was already full. Neighbors. New faces. People he didn't recognize, but who seemed to recognize the road. A projector lit up the front wall. Maps. Charts. Clean, professional layouts. This wasn't a discussion. This was a presentation. The HOA president stood at the front. Confident. Controlled. Like she'd done this before. Thank you all for attending, she began. Tonight, we're finalizing the community access corridor that will connect our development to the main highway. She clicked to the next slide. His land appeared on the screen. Highlighted. Cut through the center by a clean, straight line. Applause followed. Not loud. But enough. She continued. This project increases property value for everyone involved, including the parcel owner, who was present tonight. A few heads turned toward him. He didn't react. Didn't move. Just watched. Then she shifted tone slightly. Unfortunately, the owner chose not to engage during the approval period. A pause. Measured. Controlled. Which left the board no choice but to proceed under non-response consent. A few quiet murmurs. Someone in the back said, "Seems fair." Another nodded. The screen changed again. Now it showed numbers. Projected traffic flow. Commercial expansion. Future revenue impact. Then the final slide. Owner responsibility allocation. The number appeared large. $146,780. Gasps this time. Not from sympathy. From scale. She let it sit for a moment. Then added, "This reflects the owner's share of infrastructure benefit and long-term maintenance obligations." He could feel the room shifting. Not against him. Away from him. Like the decision had already been absorbed. Made acceptable. Normal. She looked directly at him now. "Do you have anything you'd like to add?" Silence. Every eye in the room waiting. Expecting something. Anger. Argument. Anything. But he didn't give it to them. He just shook his head once. Slow. Calm. And sat there. Because reacting here wouldn't change anything. This wasn't where the decision had been made. And it wouldn't be where it was undone. The president nodded, almost satisfied. "Then we'll proceed." She clicked the final slide. Next phase, permanent access designation. That meant one thing. The road wouldn't just stay. It would become public. Irreversible. The room approved it. Hands raised. Voices agreeing. Motion passed. Just like that. As people started to stand, conversations picking up, he remained seated for a few seconds longer. Watching the map still glowing on the screen. That straight line through his land. Clean. Confident. Wrong. He stood up quietly. Turned. Walked out without a word. No one stopped him. No one needed to. Because from the outside, it looked finished. Official. Final. And for the first time since he'd returned, it actually felt like they had won. So if everything was already decided, what was left to fight? That night, the ranch was quiet again. No voices. No meeting room. No projections or numbers on a screen. Just the road. Cutting through the land like it belonged there. He stood near the edge of it, hands in his pockets, watching headlights pass in the distance. Each one felt the same. Normal to them. Wrong to him. He'd seen this before. Not here, but somewhere else. Places where lines were drawn by people who weren't standing on the ground they were changing. Places where decisions were made fast and corrected too late. He exhaled slowly. For a moment, he considered it. Pay the fees. Clear the lane. Let it go. Walk away with what was left. Most people would. That's how systems like this worked. Pressure. Time. Isolation. They didn't need you to agree. They just needed you to stop pushing back. His phone screen lit up in his hand. The number's still there. $146,780. A deadline beneath it. Closer now. Real. He stared at it for a long second, then locked the screen. Because something still didn't sit right. Not the road. Not the money. The alignment. He walked a few steps forward, stopping near one of the survey stakes. Looked down at it again. Tilted. Barely noticeable. But wrong. And suddenly, something clicked. Not fully. Not clearly. But enough. Enough to know this wasn't over. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone again. Scrolled through old photos. Stopped on one. A picture he'd taken months ago, before deployment. Same section of land. Same boundary line. Different position. His eyes narrowed slightly. Fatigue was still there. Pressure hadn't gone anywhere. But the doubt had shifted. Because if that one marker was wrong, then everything built from it was standing on the same mistake. He looked up at the road one more time. Calm. Focused. Certain. And this time, the thought wasn't about losing. It was about timing. They moved fast. But not carefully. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. Turned toward the house. Because now he wasn't deciding whether to fight. He was deciding where to start. And if the line was wrong, then what else had they built on it? The notice arrived 2 days later. Certified. Stamped. Final. He didn't open it right away. Just held it for a second, already knowing what it would say. Then he tore it open. Official lien placement, enforced. No warning this time. No language about cooperation. Just confirmation. The number had changed again. $182,940. Accumulated penalties. Processing fees. Projected enforcement costs. And below it, failure to comply will result in partial property seizure for infrastructure compliance. He read that line twice. Not because he didn't understand it. Because he did. They weren't just charging him anymore. They were positioning to take control. He set the paper down on the table. Picked up his phone. Logged into the county records portal. Searched his parcel. The update was already there. Lien, active. Access easement, recorded. He didn't move for a few seconds. Just stared at the screen. Because from the outside, it looked complete. Legal. Locked in. He called the bank next. Simple question. If a lien is active, what happens next? The answer came quickly. Depends on compliance. But in cases like infrastructure, partial control can be enforced. Partial control. Meaning the road. Meaning the land under it. Meaning the decision was already shifting away from him. Another message came in. HOA. Short again. Direct. This matter is now legally closed. We advise compliance to avoid further loss. He didn't respond. Didn't argue. Didn't even pick up a pen this time. Because everything they needed, they already had. Approval. Records. Enforcement. From every angle, it looked finished. Like the system had already chosen a side. He stood up slowly. Walked outside. The road was still there. Cars still passing. Nothing had changed. Except now. It wasn't just built. It was backed. Protected. Official. And for the first time since he'd come back, there was no obvious move left. No immediate angle. No clear way to stop it. Just pressure. Time. And a system that said he'd already lost. He looked down at the edge of the asphalt again. That same line. That same alignment. Still clean. Still confident. Still wrong. But not wrong enough, yet. Because if everything was already filed, then proving it wasn't supposed to be would take more than just seeing it. So if the system said he lost, what was he missing that it didn't? He didn't go back to the HOA. Didn't call the board. Didn't argue the lien. Because arguing the result wouldn't change the process. And that's where something had gone wrong. He went back to the county office instead. Not the front desk this time. Records. Archived. The part most people never asked for. I need the original survey reference tied to parcel 47B, he said calmly. Not the updated one, the version before the development filings. The clerk hesitated. Those aren't usually requested. I'm requesting it. A pause. Then a slow nod. It took time. Boxes pulled. Files opened. Older records that hadn't been digitized properly. Then finally, a map. Older. Faded at the edges. Different. He laid it flat on the table, next to the newer county-approved version he'd printed earlier. At first glance, they looked identical. Same boundaries. Same dimensions. Same coordinates. But not quite. He leaned closer. Focused on one specific section. The center line. The path where the road now existed. On the newer map, it ran clean through his parcel. Perfect alignment. Approved. But on the older one, it didn't. The line was shifted. Not by much. Just enough. Enough that the road's current position didn't match the original boundary reference. He looked at the reference notes at the bottom of the page. Small text. Easy to ignore. Coordinates aligned to local development grid, adjusted. Adjusted. He flipped back to the older map. Different note. Coordinates aligned to federal survey grid. He sat back slightly. Didn't smile. Didn't react. Just understood. They hadn't moved the road. They'd moved the reference. And everything after that had followed the wrong line. He folded the older map carefully. Slid it back into the folder. Because this wasn't proof yet. Not officially. But it was something else. A crack. Small. Precise. And if that alignment had been changed, then every approval built on it was standing on the same mistake. He stood up slowly. Calm as before. But now with direction. Because if the line was wrong on paper, then the road wasn't just unauthorized. It was built in the wrong place entirely. He didn't confront the HOA. Not yet. Because what he had wasn't enough to argue. It was enough to verify. There's a difference. So he went somewhere the HOA hadn't expected him to go. Not back to the county. Not to a lawyer. He called a number he hadn't used in months. Military legal. Short explanation. Precise wording. No emotion. I need confirmation on a land survey reference tied to a federal grid alignment. Silence on the other end. Then, send what you have. He did. The old map. The new map. The coordinates. The filing dates. And then he waited. Not long. The reply came faster than anything the HOA had sent him. This shouldn't have been approved under local adjustment. He read it once. Then again. Still no reaction. Just clarity. A follow-up call came minutes later. This parcel is tied to a federal survey overlay, the voice explained. That means any boundary adjustments must be reconciled against the original federal reference before approval. He leaned slightly against the table. Listening. Was that done? He asked. Another pause. No. That was it. No long explanation. No complicated legal language. Just one missing step. One step that every document after it depended on. He thanked them. Ended the call. And for the first time since he'd come back, the system didn't feel locked anymore. It felt exposed. He went back to the county office the same day. This time, not as a question. As a comparison. He placed both maps on the counter. Old and new. Side by side. Can you overlay these? He asked. The clerk hesitated again. Then called someone else over. Another set of eyes. More experienced. They pulled up the digital system. Aligned the coordinates. Adjusted layers. At first, nothing obvious. Then, a shift. Small. Precise. But undeniable. The newer map had been aligned to a local development grid. The older one, to a federal survey grid. Two systems. Slightly different reference points. And in that difference, the boundary line had moved. Not the land. Not the ownership. Just the line used to define it. And that was enough. Enough to approve construction. Enough to file access. Enough to make it all look legal. The room went quiet. The second clerk leaned back slightly. That shouldn't have passed without reconciliation, he said. He didn't respond. Just watched. Because now it wasn't about convincing anyone. It was about letting the system see itself. What does that mean for the road? He asked. The clerk didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. He just looked at the screen. At the overlay. At the misalignment. Then said, if the federal reference holds, the road isn't where it was approved to be. Another pause. Longer this time. And if that's the case, the approval is invalid. There it was. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just stated. Clean. Like everything else that had led to this point. The clerk reached for the phone. Called someone higher up. Explained quickly. Used the same words. Federal overlay, no reconciliation, misaligned boundary. More silence. More listening. Then. Understood. He hung up. Looked back at the soldier. We're placing a temporary hold on the file. Not a reversal. Not yet. But movement. Real movement. And that was all it took. Because the moment the file was questioned, everything connected to it became unstable. Permits. Approvals. Easements. All built on the same alignment. All now under review. By the time he stepped outside, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. This is the county planning office, the voice said. We need clarification on the survey reference used for your parcel. He didn't explain. Didn't argue. Just said. You already have it. Another pause. Then. Yes, we do. The call ended. He stood there for a moment, looking out toward the road in the distance. Still there. Still active. Still being used. But something had changed. Not on the surface. Underneath. The foundation of it. Because that road was no longer backed by certainty. It was backed by a mistake. And mistakes inside systems like this don't stay hidden once they're seen. Another message came through. This time from the HOA. Shorter than usual. Less confident. We've been informed of a review request. Please advise your intent moving forward. He didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because for the first time since this started, they weren't talking like they were in control anymore. They were asking. He slipped his phone back into his pocket. Turned toward the ranch. Toward the line where the asphalt met the dirt. That same line. The one that had looked so clean. So certain. Now it looked different. Not because it had moved, but because what defined it had. He stopped just short of stepping onto it. Looked down once more. Calm. Focused. Certain. Because now he knew something they didn't. They hadn't just built a road on his land. They'd built it. Using the wrong map. And once that truth reached the right place, everything they had approved would collapse under it. The only question now was, what would happen when they realized it first? The room was quieter this time. Not because fewer people showed up, but because no one was clapping anymore. The county hearing wasn't staged like the HOA meeting had been. No polished slides. No applause breaks. Just tables, documents, and people who suddenly cared about details. The HOA board was already there when he walked in. Same president. Same posture. But something had shifted. The confidence was still there. Just thinner. More controlled. Like it had to be. A county official called the room to order. This hearing concerns the access corridor constructed across Parcel 47B, currently under review for survey alignment discrepancies. No one said anything. The words alone were enough. Discrepancies. Not accusations. Not conclusions. But enough to stop everything from feeling settled. The soldier took his seat. Didn't look at the board. Didn't acknowledge the room. Just placed 2 folders in front of him. Closed. Waiting. The HOA president stood first. Professional tone. Measured. We followed all procedures as required. The approval was granted based on submitted documentation and non-response authorization. She gestured slightly toward the officials. The corridor benefits the entire development and aligns with county expansion plans. No emotion. No hesitation. Still speaking like the system was on her side. Then she sat down. The county official nodded once. Understood. Then turned. Let's review the survey alignment. That's when it changed. The screen behind them lit up. 2 maps appeared. Side by side. The newer one, the one everything had been approved on. Clean. Straight. Confident. Then the older one. Slightly different. Not obvious. Unless you knew where to look. The official zoomed in. Overlay applied. Lines adjusted. And then the shift appeared. Small. Precise. Undeniable. A murmur moved through the room. Quiet. But real. The official spoke again. The approved development map aligns to a local grid adjustment. However, this parcel is registered under a federal survey reference. A pause. Long enough for it to settle. Which means reconciliation was required before approval. No one interrupted. No one argued. Because everyone understood what that meant. The foundation of the approval was incomplete. The soldier finally opened his folder. Pulled out one document. Placed it on the table. Not dramatically. Not aggressively. Just there. This is the original federal alignment record, he said calmly. No raised voice. No emphasis. Just fact. The official picked it up. Reviewed it. Compared it to the screen. Then nodded once. Slow. Deliberate. The HOA president shifted slightly in her seat. First time. We acted in good faith based on county records, she said, controlled but tighter now. The official didn't look at her. Just responded. The county records were based on submitted data. Another pause. Then. Which did not include federal reconciliation. Silence. He leaned back slightly in his chair. Still calm. Still composed. Because this wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about letting the system correct itself. The financial numbers came next. Displayed on the screen. $2.8 million project. Approved. Funded. Built. All tied to that one alignment. All now unstable. The HOA representative spoke again. If there was an oversight, it can be corrected administratively without affecting the project. That's when he spoke again. For the second time. Same tone. Same control. No. Not loud. Not sharp. Just final. Every eye turned toward him. He didn't look at them. Just at the screen. Then said, "The road wasn't built where it was approved." A pause. Then, "It was built where the wrong map said it was." The room went still. Because that wasn't a correction. That was a problem. A real one. The official looked back at the overlay. Then at the document. Then back at the road alignment. And for the first time, he didn't look certain. The soldier continued. Calm as before. "You didn't approve access across my land." A slight breath. Measured. Controlled. "You approved it across a line that doesn't exist." That was it. No speech. No argument. Just one sentence. Clean. Complete. And it landed. Because there was nothing to push back against. No emotion to counter. No exaggeration to dismiss. Just structure. And the structure had broken. The official turned to the board. "Given the misalignment and lack of federal reconciliation, this approval is no longer valid under current review." No one moved. No one spoke. Because everyone understood what that meant. Not a delay. Not a correction. Invalid. The word hung in the room. Heavy. Final. The HOA president didn't respond immediately. Couldn't. Because for the first time since this started, she didn't have a document to point to. Didn't have a policy to stand behind. Just a project. Built on the wrong line. The official continued. "All enforcement actions tied to this approval are suspended pending full review." That meant the lien. The fees. The access. Everything. Suspended. The soldier closed his folder. Didn't rush. Didn't react. Because this wasn't the end. Not yet. But it was the moment everything shifted. From control to consequence. As the room slowly came back to life, voices low, uncertain, different, he stood up. No announcement. No acknowledgement. Just movement. Because the road was still there. The damage still done. And the system had just realized it. So now that the truth was on record, what would it cost them to fix it? The decision didn't come in the room. It came later. Quietly. Officially. The kind of decision that doesn't need an audience, because the paperwork says everything. 3 days after the hearing, the notice arrived. Not from the HOA. From the county. He opened it the same way he had opened everything else. Calm. Measured. Expecting nothing. Administrative determination, parcel 47B. No dramatic language. No long explanation. Just a sequence of corrections. The first line mattered most. Previously approved access corridor is hereby declared invalid due to survey misalignment and failure to reconcile federal reference requirements. He read it once. That was enough. Below it, all enforcement actions tied to the invalid approval are nullified. That meant the lien. Gone. The fees. Erased. Every notice they had sent him, reduced to nothing. He set the paper down. Didn't react. Just continued reading. Responsible parties are subject to corrective compliance and associated costs. Not him. Them. A second document followed. More detailed. Construction conducted outside authorized alignment constitutes unauthorized development. The wording was precise. Careful. But clear. The road wasn't just disputed anymore. It was wrong. Officially. His phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a call. Unknown number. He answered. "This is the county planning office," the voice said. We're coordinating next steps regarding the corridor. He didn't interrupt. Didn't ask questions. Just listened. Construction activity has been ordered to cease immediately. A review is underway to determine whether the road must be removed or realigned. A pause. Then, costs will not be assigned to the parcel owner. He closed his eyes for a second. Not relief. Just confirmation. The system had corrected itself. He stepped outside. The road was still there. Still cutting through the land. Still being used. But not the same way. Barricades had already been placed at one end. Temporary. But real. Traffic slowed. Then stopped. Workers stood near the edges now. Not building. Not expanding. Just waiting. Because once something is declared invalid, it doesn't matter how much was spent on it. It stops. Another message came through. HOA. Longer this time. Different tone. We acknowledge the county's determination and will comply with all corrective actions. We request discussion regarding potential resolution. No demands. No instructions. Just a request. He didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because resolution wasn't something they controlled anymore. It was something they were subject to. Later that afternoon, another update came. This one more specific. Preliminary liability assessment indicates responsibility for construction, filing discrepancies, and enforcement actions rests with the initiating body. The HOA. The board. The same group that had stood in front of a room and presented his land like it was already theirs. Now responsible for the build, the mistake, the consequences. And consequences were coming. Internally first. Then publicly. Because projects like this don't disappear quietly. They leave records. And records lead back to people. He walked down to the edge of the asphalt one more time. Looked at the line where it met the dirt. The same line that had started everything. Still straight. Still clean. Still wrong. But now, recognized as wrong. He stepped over it. Slowly. Not to reclaim it. Not to prove anything. Just to stand on the ground as it actually was. Unchanged. Unmoved. Correct. Because in the end, they hadn't taken his land. They had just built on a version of it that didn't exist. And now the system knew the difference. Behind him, the road sat quiet for the first time since he'd returned. No traffic. No movement. Just a structure waiting to be corrected. And somewhere beyond that, decisions were already being reversed. Not loudly. Not publicly. But permanently. Because once a mistake like this is written into record, it doesn't get ignored. It gets fixed. And this time, they were the ones who had to pay for it. A few weeks later, the road was gone. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Section by section, it disappeared. Asphalt broken. Machinery reversed. The line that had cut through his land, slowly erased. What remained wasn't perfect. The ground showed where it had been. A faint scar across the ranch. But the boundary markers had been reset. Correct this time. Measured against the right reference. Not adjusted. Not assumed. Accurate. The HOA board changed quietly. No announcements. No explanations. Just different names where the old ones used to be. Meetings stopped. Letters stopped. The system that had moved so fast before slowed down. Carefully. He stood near the edge of the land one evening, looking out across it again. No road. No traffic. Just open ground. The way it had always been. He didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. Because this was never about winning. It was about correction. About making sure that what was his stayed his. He glanced once more at the boundary marker. Still aligned. Certain. Then turned away. Because some lines don't need to be defended loudly. They just need to be drawn in the right place.